the passing view outside, showing grey buildings fading into open land, while inside the car time seemed slower, heavier, and full of thoughts that moved too fast to hold. Mark sat across from her with straight posture and calm hands folded on his lap, looking older than she remembered, not weak, but tired in a quiet way that comes from carrying responsibility and loss without complaint. And Emily noticed small details she had ignored before, the faint lines near his eyes, the careful way he avoided looking directly at her, not out of coldness, but respect. And the silence between them was not angry or sharp, but careful, like two people afraid that one wrong word might break something that was already fragile, because since her mother passed away 2 years ago, their relationship had changed without either choosing it. Meals became shorter, conversations became polite, and the house they shared felt like a place where everyone walked softly, trying not to disturb the past. And now on this train, with nowhere to escape and no distractions strong enough to hide behind, Emily felt her emotions rise, not dramatic but deep, a mix of sadness, curiosity, and a strange hope she did not fully understand. The conductor's voice echoed briefly through the car announcing the next stop, pulling her attention back as Mark shifted slightly and cleared his throat, almost speaking, but stopping himself, and that small moment made Emily realize how much both of them were holding back, how many things were left unsaid, how grief had built walls instead of bridges. And as the train picked up speed, she watched the sky change color and remembered being a teenager when Mark first entered their lives, patient, quiet, never trying too hard to replace anyone, just showing up day after day, helping with school projects, fixing broken doors, listening more than he spoke. And now sitting across from him, she wondered if she had ever truly thanked him. The thought made her uncomfortable, because gratitude felt tied to loss, and loss still hurt. The car filled slowly with soft sounds, pages turning, bags shifting, distant laughter, but inside Emily's mind everything felt loud. Memories of her mother smiling at train stations, waving goodbye, promising to call, and she wondered if Mark remembered those moments too, or if he carried different memories, heavier ones. And she felt a pull, not romantic, not confusing, but human, the pull to connect, to share the weight instead of carrying it alone. Mark finally looked up and their eyes met briefly, and in that second Emily saw something honest there, not authority, not distance, but care mixed with uncertainty, as if he too was wondering how to cross the space between them without doing harm. The train curved gently, causing their bodies to sway slightly, a reminder that movement was happening whether they were ready or not. And Emily thought about the reason for the trip, a work conference for her, a visit to an old friend for Mark, two separate reasons tied together by chance and timing, and she realized that sharing this car was not an accident, but an opportunity neither had asked for. And the more she thought about it, the more she felt that this ride would matter in ways she could not yet name. Her phone buzzed with a message she ignored, choosing instead to stay present, to listen to the rhythm of the wheels and the quiet breathing of the man across from her. Mark adjusted his jacket and finally spoke, asking if she needed anything, his voice calm, but careful, and she shook her head with a small smile that surprised both of them, because it was real, not forced. And in that moment the tension shifted, not disappearing but softening, like ice beginning to crack under warm light. And Emily felt a sudden sense of change, a feeling that this trip would not stay simple or silent, that something would rise to the surface before they reached their destination. Something emotional, honest, and unexpected. And as the train moved deeper into open country, carrying them away from the city and into a space where memories had room to breathe, Emily leaned back and closed her eyes, unaware that this was only the beginning of a journey that would quietly reshape how both of them understood the past, the present, and each other. The dining car was brighter than Emily expected, filled with low voices, clinking cups, and the smell of coffee. And as she stepped inside she hesitated, unsure where to sit, until Mark noticed her pause and quietly stood, offering his seat with a small nod that felt natural and kind. And that simple moment broke the careful distance they had been holding since the trip began, because when Emily thanked him and sat down, she felt less like a guest in his space and more like someone allowed to be present. And when he joined her a moment later with 2 cups of coffee, placing one in front of her without asking, it reminded her of how well he had always paid attention, even when words failed them. And they began to talk slowly at first, not about big things, but about the train itself, the long route, the way travel made time feel different. And Emily noticed how Mark spoke with ease when the topic was neutral, his voice steady, his eyes calm, and that steadiness helped her relax, making it easier to speak without overthinking every word. And as the train rolled forward, their conversation shifted naturally toward memories of past trips, small family vacations, late-night drives, and shared meals, and without planning it, they both mentioned her mother within minutes of each other, not dramatically, but gently, as if a name had been waiting to be spoken, and the moment could have become heavy, but instead it felt honest, because Mark smiled softly and said something simple about how she used to overpack for every trip, and Emily laughed before she realized it, surprised by how good it felt to laugh without guilt, and that laughter opened the door to deeper sharing, because Emily admitted how much she missed her mother's voice during moments like this, the quiet ones when movement gave space for thought. And Mark listened without interrupting, his attention full and steady, and when he finally spoke, he didn't try to fix anything, he simply shared how the silence in the house still felt strange to him, how he sometimes caught himself setting out 2 cups instead of 1 in the morning, and Emily felt a shift then, understanding that grief was not something she carried alone, that Mark's loss was different, but just as real. And as the dining car slowly emptied and the scenery outside changed from flat land to rolling hills, their words came easier, moving faster, touching on the present and the future instead of circling the past. Emily talked about her work, her uncertainty, the feeling that she was standing at the edge of something new without knowing how to step forward, and Mark shared his quiet worries about starting over in later years, about learning how to let go without losing connection, and there was no tension in these words, no confusion, only mutual respect and shared humanity, the kind that grows when 2 people finally stop avoiding the truth. And as the train continued, they returned to their seats, the conversation still flowing, interrupted by brief silences that no longer felt uncomfortable, and Emily noticed how those pauses felt warm instead of tense, like space to breathe instead of walls, and she realized that the closeness she felt was not about crossing lines, but about finally standing on the same side of them, understanding each other as adults shaped by love and loss. And Mark seemed lighter too, his shoulders less tight, his words more open, and when he asked Emily if she was happy, truly happy, she didn't rush to answer, choosing honesty instead, admitting she wasn't sure yet, but wanted to be, and Mark nodded, telling her that not knowing was okay, that movement mattered more than certainty, and that advice stayed with her as the afternoon passed into evening, the light outside turning soft and golden, reflecting on the glass, and Emily felt something settle inside her, a calm she hadn't expected from this trip, because instead of reopening wounds, the conversation had helped them name them, and naming pain made it smaller, more manageable. And as the train slowed briefly for another stop, Emily looked at Mark and felt gratitude without sadness, connection without confusion, and a quiet belief that this journey was doing more than moving them across states. It was moving them forward, preparing them for what was still to come, even if neither of them knew yet how unexpected the next turn would be. Night came faster than expected, and with it a sudden storm that rattled the windows and forced the train to slow and finally stop in the middle of open land, leaving passengers confused but calm as announcements explained delays and invited everyone to stretch, talk, and wait together. And Emily felt the shift immediately, because moments like this changed people, pulling strangers into shared time, and as she stepped into the aisle she felt lighter than before, no longer carrying the heavy silence of the morning. And that was when she met Daniel, a man standing near the window with a jacket folded over his arm and a thoughtful look on his face, and their conversation started easily, not because they tried, but because neither felt the need to impress, talking about where they were headed, how unexpected pauses in travel often led to the best stories, and Emily noticed how Daniel listened fully, the way he waited before speaking, making her feel seen without pressure. And as minutes passed into an hour, they shared pieces of their lives, small but meaningful, Daniel speaking about starting over after a difficult year, Emily talking about learning how to move forward without feeling guilty for wanting more, and the storm outside made everything feel closer, warmer, like the world had shrunk to this train and the people inside it. And across the car Mark watched quietly, not with concern or confusion, but with something close to peace, because seeing Emily open up to someone new helped him understand something important, that her life was unfolding in ways that did not erase the past, but built beyond it. And that realization eased a weight he had been carrying without naming, and while Emily laughed softly at something Daniel said, Mark felt a calm acceptance settle in. Knowing that his role was not to guide or protect anymore, but to support from a respectful distance, and as the delay stretched on, passengers shared snacks, stories, and gentle humor, the storm becoming a shared challenge instead of a threat. And Emily felt herself relax fully for the first time in years, aware of how grief had narrowed her world and how moments like this widened it again. And when the conductor finally announced the train would resume shortly, there was a quiet disappointment among the group, not because of the delay, but because the shared pause was ending, and Emily returned to her seat with Daniel walking beside her, their conversation unfinished but promising, and Mark met Emily's eyes briefly, giving a small nod that carried understanding rather than questions, and Emily felt gratitude in that look, a silent message of trust and encouragement. And as the train moved forward again, the rhythm steady and comforting, Emily reflected on how unexpected the night had become, how a forced stop had created movement inside her, helping her see that connection did not mean replacing what was lost, but honoring it by continuing to live fully, and Daniel's presence felt like a reminder of that truth, gentle and respectful, not demanding anything, but offering possibility, and Mark, settling back into his seat, felt lighter knowing Emily was not stuck in the same quiet sadness he had feared, but growing beyond it. And as the lights dimmed and the train cut through the dark landscape, all three sat with their own thoughts, shaped by the same unexpected moment, each realizing that this trip was no longer just about reaching a destination, but about understanding change, acceptance, and the quiet ways life moves forward even when plans pause. And none of them knew exactly how things would unfold after this night, but they all sensed that something important had shifted, something that would stay with them long after the train reached its final stop. Morning arrived softly as the train moved closer to Seattle, the storm now a memory replaced by pale light and quiet conversations, and Emily woke feeling different, not dramatic, but clear, as if something inside her had finally settled into place, and she noticed Mark already awake, looking out the window with calm focus, no longer tense, and when their eyes met they shared a natural smile that carried warmth without effort. And that simple exchange said more than words could, because it showed how far they had come in just one journey. And as the train slowed into the city, passengers gathered their bags and final thoughts, Emily standing beside Daniel near the exit while Mark waited a few steps behind, giving space without distance. And in those final minutes Emily reflected on how unexpected the trip had been, how sharing the same car with her stepfather had once felt heavy, but now felt meaningful, because it allowed truth to surface without harm, connection without confusion, and understanding without crossing any lines. And when the doors opened and the platform filled with movement, Emily stepped onto the ground feeling steady, grounded, and ready, and she turned to Mark first, hugging him with genuine warmth, thanking him for being patient, for listening, for staying when things were hard. And Mark held the hug briefly but firmly, telling her how proud he was, not just of who she was becoming but of her courage to move forward. And that moment closed a chapter neither had known how to end before. And then Emily turned to Daniel, exchanging a quiet smile and a promise to stay in touch, not rushed, not forced, just honest. And Mark watched them with a peaceful heart, understanding that love took many forms and that letting go could be an act of care. And as they went their separate ways, the city rising around them, each carried something important from the trip. Emily carried clarity and hope, Mark carried acceptance and relief, and Daniel carried the warmth of an unexpected connection. And none of them felt confused or conflicted, only changed in quiet, respectful ways, because the journey had not created something forbidden or broken, but something healed. And as the train pulled away behind them, continuing on without pause, it felt like a symbol of what life did best, moving forward even when emotions lingered. And Emily walked into the city with confidence, knowing the past no longer held her still, and Mark headed toward his own destination with peace instead of regret. And the trip that had begun with silence ended with understanding, proving that sometimes the most unexpected journeys do not end in romance alone, but in growth, closure, and the kind of emotional truth that stays long after the ride is over.